Back.
Merhaba arkadaşlar, hepiniz IEFT Talks webinarlarına hoş geldiniz. Bugün dünyanın en yaşanılır ülkesi İsveç'te Lund University'de eğitimi Rebecca'dan dinliyor olacağız. Lütfen sorularınızı questions kısmından sormayı unutmayın. Yes, Rebecca, the stage is yours now.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here today and to see you all. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my presentation. So I'll just be one moment. Okay, let's make sure that this is working. There we go. Hopefully you can all now see my presentation. So we'll start with this presentation, which will go through various things that you may wish to know about studying at Lund University. So we'll start with a brief overview of why Sweden, why Lund University, what kind of programs we offer, and then we'll move on to the requirements for admission, specifically thinking about students from Turkey. And then we'll speak about various other things that you may have questions about, such as living costs, funding opportunities, and accommodation. I'll try to make sure that I cover a range of topics, but if there's something that I don't cover, please do feel free to put your question in, and after the presentation is finished, I will answer those questions. So the one thing that I would say is that I can't see the screen other than the presentation while I'm presenting. So please allow me time to get back to you later to present. Okay. So we'll start with a little brief overview about Sweden. For anybody who is not aware, Sweden is in Northern Europe, and it's known for being a place of democratic values, gender equality, creativity, innovation, and sustainability. And this slide has some pictures of things which are associated with Sweden, such as IKEA, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and the Nobel Prize. So we're known for a few things. There's a few stereotypes and great innovations that come from Sweden, which might make it known to you. But in terms of Lund itself and the university, it was founded in 1666. It's one of the oldest universities in Northern Europe. We have more than 43,000 students and 8,100 staff. We offer over 130 master's programs, 9 bachelor's programs, and several hundred courses taught in English. We're in the world top 100 university list, and we're listed as the 40th most international university in the world. And we are the top choice for international students applying to Sweden. We are public, we're comprehensive, meaning we do not specialize in only one particular area, but many, and we're research intensive. And as we go through this presentation, you'll see various pictures and photographs of both the university and the surrounding town. So I'll try to mention those if I see one that I think you might find particularly interesting. So the city of Lund itself was founded in 990, so it's one of the oldest cities in Sweden. It's situated in southern Sweden, close to Copenhagen, which is the capital of Denmark, and Malmö, which is the 3rd largest city in Sweden. As you can see on the slide, Malmö is only 10 minutes away by train, and Copenhagen is only 40 minutes away, offering great links to the rest of Europe. We have a population in Lund of around 125,000, and it offers a real university town experience. So you will see in the photos of the city that we have many old traditional buildings that still are owned by the university, as well as more modern facilities as well. And the size of the town means that it always feels like a comfortable, small city. It's home to many world-class research and development units, or R&D units, of companies with links to us, such as Ericsson, Sony, Tetra Pak, and more. And here is one of those lovely old buildings now. This is quite famous in Lund. It's the university main library. And what I love about it is that the ivy that you can see, the plants on the outside of the building, change colour through the year. So it's always different every few months. The town itself of Lund is famous for its unique and vibrant student life. We have various different activities that you can get involved with if you are a student in Lund, such as the carnival, which happens every year. Many of these photos are from the yearly carnival. And also the nations as well, which are like social clubs that run things like meals, activities that you might wish to get involved with in the evenings. And we also have many societies for interests that you might have, such as music, drama, etc. As I already mentioned, Lund University is Sweden's most international university because we have over 20% international students in our overall cohort. And in master's programs, that's even higher at 60%. So we are the most popular university for international master's programs taught in English. And we also have more than 640 partner universities in more than 70 other countries. So we can offer exchanges and research links to other institutions. Exchange mostly takes place at the bachelor's level, but it is also possible within some master's programs. So that's good to know. In terms of the higher education system in Sweden, during this presentation I will talk about undergraduate or bachelor's programs and postgraduate programs such as master's degrees. So when I'm talking about those, when I say a bachelor's degree, I'm usually referring to a 3-year program, which is the equivalent of 180 ECTS, which is the European credit system. And then when I talk about master's degrees, I'm speaking about either a 1-year program, which is 60 ECTS, or a 2-year program, which is 120 ECTS. And most of our programs are 2 years, but there are some 1-year programs. And both are considered equally valuable to employers. It's just that the pace and the structure of the course is slightly different for a 1-year program than a 2-year program. Although we won't really talk too much about PhDs today because my speciality is the taught programs at bachelor's and master's level, it's important to note that PhDs usually take around 4 years and they are more like employment. You get paid to take a PhD. So as you can imagine, they're very popular choices for people after a master's degree and can be quite competitive. We'll touch on that briefly later. So we offer one of Scandinavia's widest range of programs taught in English. And I won't read all of these out, but you can see the kinds of areas here that we cover. So it's all sorts of areas from architecture through to science. And we have various different masters in each area. And then we have around 9 bachelor's programs total across some of these different areas. So there should be something that you can find which you are interested in. And then it's a question of making sure that you're also eligible. So we have 9 faculties, more than 30 research fields. And in terms of eligibility, when we're looking at master's programs, we're talking here about, for students from Turkey, that you must have already achieved a bachelor's degree. So either a lisans diplomacy or a mühendislik diplomacy, please excuse my pronunciation, of at least 4 years. So a 2-year degree or a vocational degree, unfortunately, do not fulfill the requirements for master's level studies. It's only the 2 kinds of bachelor's degree that you can see here. So that's something very important to note. You also need to be able to prove your English language proficiency. And again, we will talk about that later as to what that means. A GRE test or a GMAT test are not required. The only exception to that being, well, not exception, but for some of our business programs, if you have a great balanced GMAT, you are allowed to submit that. That will be clear on the program page as to whether they would like you to submit that or not. But it's not required. It's just something that you can add to certain business masters if you wish to. Most programs have specific entry requirements, so they normally want you to have already studied something relevant in the past, and they will make that clear on the program page. while some programs are open to many different types of students. So for example, our public health program is open to anybody who already has a bachelor's degree that meets this requirement. So it's very important to check on the program page to see what those specific requirements are. And we have a link here to the program web pages. Later, we will be able to share this presentation, this recording, so you can come back to this and find these relevant links. Conditional acceptance is offered for master's level studies. So if you are in your final year of a bachelor's program and you are applying for next year, so a program starting in autumn 2022, then that is fine. You simply need to submit a form, which you can find on our university admissions website, which shows that you're in your final year. And then, of course, you also need to submit your transcripts and your final bachelor's certificate once you receive it before you can start the program. So if that's you, if you're in that situation, then please do feel free to check out the specific rules for people in their last year of their bachelor's on universityadmissions.se. Okay. So in terms of the documents that you would submit for your master's application, you should submit your transcripts, you should submit your diploma or your degree certificate issued by the home university, or, as I mentioned, proof of enrolment, including your date of graduation if you're in your final year. It's important to note that those documents usually will need to be provided both in the original language and in an officially certified English translation. You also need to provide your ID, your proof of English language proficiency, and any documents which are specifically requested by your program. Again, on those program pages, in addition to listing the eligibility requirements, they also have a section where it says program-specific documents. And in that section, you can check whether or not they require any additional documents. And that might be something like a statement of purpose, which is quite similar to a personal statement, is sometimes another name for that, or letters of recommendation. And I really recommend, if you can, reading that section and clicking any links that they provide for further information about what they expect from those documents, because that will put you in a good place, a good position to submit the kinds of things that they're really looking for. Okay, so then if we move on to the bachelor's programs, which are very popular, for those, you have to have successfully completed your upper secondary school. So that means that you provide your secondary school certificate, and there's a list here of various different diplomacies which can act as your secondary school certificate, so check which one is relevant for you, and your final grades in the form of a transcript. Again, you have to prove your English language proficiency, and you also have to check whether you have studied the required subjects at secondary school. This can be difficult with the bachelor's program, so that's something to be aware of, that it can be quite challenging to work out your eligibility. But if you have a look at the program page and then you're not sure whether you're eligible, you're really welcome to contact us and we can see whether we are able to help explain those requirements a little bit more for you. We can't pre-assess you or check that you are eligible, but we can explain a little bit more what those requirements may mean for you. For the bachelor's programs, admission is based 100% on upper secondary school grade point average. So it's all about your secondary school grades. But some programs like fine arts and music also conduct interviews as well. And it's important to note that for the bachelor's programs, we can't offer conditional acceptance. So only applicants that have completed your upper secondary school merits by the document deadline, and we'll talk about that later as well when that is, can be given admission to bachelor's studies. So that's really important to note, and yeah, we'll come back to that because it's a key deadline. Oh, this is another one of our lovely, our lovely buildings, the main administrative building for the university. So in terms of the documents you need for bachelor's, again, you need your complete transcript of records from upper secondary school, all years, your certificate of graduation from upper secondary school, And again, they should be provided in the original language and in officially certified English translations. You again need to provide your ID, your proof of English proficiency. And for our music or fine arts program, you may also need to provide a portfolio of your work or something similar to that. So you should check the program details on the program pages for those particular ones. Okay, so for both the master's programs and the bachelor's programs, as you've seen, you need to provide proof of your English proficiency. Unfortunately, upper secondary studies completed in Turkey do not meet the requirement to prove your English proficiency. And preparatory studies completed in Turkey no longer meet the English requirement either. They used to, but unfortunately not anymore. So even if you've been exempted from the English preparatory year by taking an exam in English, unfortunately that still does not count. However, if you have studied a bachelor's or an engineering diplomacy of at least 4 years, then you can meet the requirement through that if your degree certificate clearly states that the language of instruction for the programme was English, or it was awarded recently, so within the last 10 years, from a university where English is the only language of instruction. And the way that they check that is by looking at the World Higher Education database. So you can also do that online. Check whether your university is listed as only teaching in English. If so, that's fine. You can use your degree certificate to prove your English proficiency. If you have a higher level qualification, so above bachelor's level, where the same applies, that's also fine. And if you've studied abroad, so say you've studied in the UK or another English-speaking country, you may also be able to provide evidence of that. The last option, which is, to be honest, the most common option, is to provide an internationally recognised English test, such as IELTS or TOEFL. So in that case, the test should be less than 2 years old, and it must appear on our list of accepted tests. There's a link here, or you can search for universityadmissions.se English language requirements to find out which option is the best for you. So I said I would talk about PhD just briefly, because I know it's very popular. There is no centralised application system for PhD. So that means there's no specific time period for applications. There's no specific requirement for documents or, you must prove this, you must prove that. Instead, each PhD position is advertised by the department whenever they have funding to offer that kind of opportunity. So admission to a PhD position typically requires that you have already completed bachelor's and master's level studies and that you have proof of English language, but it can vary depending on exactly what the opportunity is. PhD students are typically employed, so you receive a salary, and it takes around 4 years. It can take longer depending on what you're doing, basically. If you actually have your own funding, you can contact a relevant department in Lund directly to see whether that would be something that they would allow you to do. But there is more information on our website about PhD studies, and we generally suggest that you look at our job page on our website in order to find what positions are currently available for PhD. Okay, so what is it like to study in Sweden? If you found a program, you found out you're eligible, you've applied, and you actually come and join us, what is that study experience like? Well, the main things that are perhaps different depending on your previous experience of study is that usually you would study one course or subject at a time, and that would be a course between 2 and 20 weeks long. The most common would be 5 weeks or 10 weeks. And then at the end of that course, you would have an examination or a paper, an essay to write. And personally, I think that's a wonderful method of study because it allows you to focus on one thing at a time and not to juggle multiple deadlines at the same time, which can be stressful. So you go deeply into a certain subject and then you move on to the next one. Contact time varies. So some courses, for example, engineering, may have 30 formal lecture hours per week, while some, like social sciences, may only have 10. But then it's important to note that all of the programs expect you to be working around 40 hours a week. It's just the balance of whether that time is in lectures or whether it's self-led study at home, such as reading or other forms of study, such as lab work or group work or independent projects. So there is still an expectation for all of our programs of around a 40-hour week workload, but the teaching method can vary. The most common is lectures to groups of 25 to 30 normally in a classroom. But of course, many of our science programs include a high focus on lab work, and many of the programs include a high focus on group work. It's felt that that really encourages cooperation and communication and the ability to share the sort of differing backgrounds that each student will have. The fact that we're such an international university makes it even more beneficial to kind of study with others in a peer group where you may have different backgrounds, different academic qualifications, for example. I studied myself at Lund University, and at first I was a little bit apprehensive about group work. I wasn't sure if it was going to be very good because I kind of like to do things myself. But I ended up really appreciating that element of studying in Sweden because I got to know my course colleagues really well. And I really felt that it benefited me to basically have that interaction and benefit from their knowledge and everything that they were bringing. So yeah, students are expected to be active in the classroom, so be confident to speak up and to take a high degree of responsibility for your own studies. And there are very supportive relationships with staff on the most part. So in Sweden, Sweden is known for having everybody be on a first name basis. So you call your lecturer Tim or John or Maria or whatever. So that's something that sometimes surprises people if they're used to a bit more of a formal system of address to the lecturers. So yeah, that's another thing to know. Okay, moving on to funding, fees and scholarships. Programs have different tuition fee levels and can cost between 100,000 and 210,000 krona, which is approximately 10,000 to 21,000 euro per year, depending on the major that you choose. The tuition fee is paid in installments once per semester. You also need to bear in mind that when you apply for a student residence permit, you need to show that you have at least 85,140 krona, so 8,500 euro, for the whole year of study, or more if you're studying for more than 1 year. So that's important to note, that you must have that ability to finance yourself before you apply for a student residence permit. We normally break that down to being a budget of around 900 euros a month to cover accommodation, food, books, transportation, depending on your lifestyle, I guess, like how much you can cook at home and whether or not you find cheap housing, that can change. Sweden is usually cheaper than people assume, but things like restaurants and taxis are expensive. So it kind of depends a little bit on your expectation and lifestyle. Accommodation and insurance. There is a housing guarantee for non-EU students. So that's great. That means that you don't have to worry about whether or not you will find a room. You definitely will. These are usually single occupancy student dorm rooms. It's not possible, unfortunately, to get a family student room. There are different types of housing units available, and the most common is a corridor room. So you have your own bedroom on a corridor and either a private bathroom or a shared bathroom, and then a shared kitchen and living space. Dorms are located all over the city and they come with basic furniture, and you would be spending between 3,200 krona and 4,800 krona a month, depending on various factors. It's possible to rent on your own or with friends, but we definitely recommend that you accept your offer of a student room when you first come to Lund University, because it is much easier to house search from the city than it is from abroad. And most people find that a stressful process when they're trying to find housing without the offer of a housing guarantee. So if you have one, then we recommend you use it. Tuition fee liable students are covered by a special insurance provided by the Swedish government at no extra cost. So that means you'll never be in a situation where you have a health emergency and you cannot get help. This is the inside of the main building where lots of graduation ceremonies are held. I think it's very beautiful. Okay, so in terms of scholarships, for Turkey, the most relevant scholarships are the Lund University Global Scholarship, which I'll give a little bit more detail about in a second. We also are aware of a couple of options specifically for Turkish students. One of them is the Jean Monnet Scholarship Programme, which supports relationships between Turkey and various other places in Europe. And this is for a minimum of 3 and maximum of 12-month studies. So that's an important limit to be aware of. It would only be relevant for those studying a 1-year master's. There's also the Ministry of Education, MEB, bursary covering education and living expenses. So these are some options to look into, as well as, of course, doing your own research into funding. So the Lund University Global Scholarship is a program based on academic merit. It covers either 25%, 50%, 75% or 100% of the tuition fee. So it's a tuition fee discount. It does not cover your living costs or anything additional to your tuition fee. It just gives you a discount on the tuition fee. But of course, that can be very helpful for many students. It's based on your academic merit and your motivation to study in Lund. So as part of the application, you submit a motivation letter. About 15 million krona is awarded every year, and the process takes place in early February. So we'll talk about the application dates in just a second, but after you've applied for studies, then you should look out for the opportunity to apply for this particular scholarship, because it only is open for about a week or 2 in February. The scholarship is only awarded to students who choose Lund University as their first choice. We occasionally award scholarships to second-year students, but this is quite rare, so it's best if you apply before you come, basically. And here is a typical lecture theatre that you might experience if you're studying in Lund. Okay, final things that I want to mention before we finish this presentation. These are kind of takeaway points that you should bear in mind. Programs may only consider you for admission if you truly fulfill the entry requirements. So you must make sure, as best you can, that you're eligible to be in with a chance of receiving an offer. Supporting documents must be provided in the way that is described on universityadmissions.se, and your application may be rejected if you don't submit all of the documents that are required, or if you don't submit them in the correct way. So it's very important that you check exactly what documents you need to submit and that you submit them on time. Only submit supporting documents that are requested, because these are the only ones that will be assessed. If there are issues with your application or your documents, these must be discovered and corrected before the document deadline. So it's a really good idea to make a complete application soon, because that gives you time to actually correct any issues and to be communicated with by the admissions team if there is a problem. And speaking of communication, please make sure that you use an email which you have access to when you apply, and that you check both the university admissions account and your emails during the application process, because that's the only way that you would find out if there was a problem. So important dates, if you've now decided, yeah, this sounds great, this is for me, I understand, I can do this, then it's really important to know how the application process works from this point on. So the online application system has already opened. You can apply from the program page of the program that you are interested in by clicking on Apply Now, or you can go directly to www.universityadmissions.se and then search for your program there. You have to basically select the program and click Apply before January the 17th. And you also, if you apply for more than one program, you also must choose what order you rank your programs in. And as I mentioned, to be eligible for the Lund University Global Scholarship, you must have ranked Lund University as your top choice, Also, because Lund University is a very competitive university, that's often a good idea anyway, because if you apply for other universities, you will be assessed for them first, and you may not be assessed for, you may not receive an offer, I should say, for Lund University. So it's important to put the program that you think you are most interested in and most eligible for at the top of that list. You can apply to up to 4 master's programs and up to 8 bachelor's programs. Once you've applied and you've ranked your programs, then you have until February the 1st to supply any supporting documents and also to pay the application fee, which is approximately €90. In April, you would have your admission results announced, which is a very exciting moment. And then you would activate your student account, accept your offer, apply for housing, pay the first tuition fee, and then apply for your residence permit. And then hopefully we would see you in August when you would start your program. So that's the kind of timeline that we're looking at here. And as I mentioned, it's a really good idea to not wait all the way up until January to apply, because if you need to change anything, it would be great to know that early so that you can update that. That February the 1st deadline is extremely strict. If you can't provide any of the documents, for example, proof of English or your transcript or anything else that you've been requested to provide by the 1st of February, unfortunately, you would not be considered after that date. So please do make sure that you meet that deadline. Okay. Top reasons to choose us. We are consistently ranked as one of the world's top 100 universities and one of the most international universities in Europe. We're one of the strongest research universities in Scandinavia, so we can offer cutting-edge education and facilities. We're a member of prestigious international networks like LERU and Universitas 21. 90% of Swedish people speak English, and you can definitely enjoy your time at the university with only English. It might be nice to learn some Swedish for you, but it's not necessary, which is great. The strong research environment means you will have many opportunities to pursue further studies, and it's a real university town with access to continental Europe. So that is my presentation. I will stop sharing my screen now so that I can come back and see the the rest of the room. Okay, so I hope that was useful and interesting for you, and I hope it covered a lot of the different areas that you might have had. I'm now going to start having a look at the questions in the chat area here, and I'll just have a quick glance through just to see what I can see here. So just give me a moment to have a look. Okay, so I'll start from the top. I can see, so I can see this question is around basically eligibility. And the question from Fatma is, I've studied architecture. Can I apply for environmental studies and sustainability? Well, I won't go into complete, exact details about particular programs, because that would just end up with me checking every single program. But what I can say is that if you go onto the program page and you have a look, and it doesn't say a particular previous subject. So I think you've here seen that on that particular program, the environmental programs, they don't specify that you must have previously studied environmental studies, which means that it's okay to apply with a different background. And the main thing to check on there is what kind of other program documents they're requesting, because within that, they may expect you to show where your interest in this subject comes from. So for example, if you're applying for an environmental program and you have previously studied, let's say, English literature, then they would want you to still be able to demonstrate your interest in environmental studies, because that's a general thing that everybody can take advice from as well, that all of the programs want to know that you are genuinely interested in their subject, and that you have usually checked out the program really in detail to understand why that particular program, why come to this university and study this program. Most departments are going to want to see evidence that you have really thought about this. So it's important to, even with the programs where they don't specify a previous area of study, to still consider, why am I interested in this program specifically, and how can I show that with the other documents that they might request? Maybe it's a CV, maybe it's a statement of purpose. You can have a look and see what that particular program requires. But yeah, to answer your question, if it doesn't say that you must have a particular previous area of study, that means it's fine to apply with any bachelor's that meets the requirements that we spoke about earlier for Turkish students. I hope that answers your question and that it's helpful. Yeah, another question from the same person is, can we complete our associate degree by choosing a bachelor program? I'm afraid I'm not sure about the answer to that question. I think you may mean, can you transfer during your bachelor's? Please let me know if I've interpreted that correctly or not. Unfortunately, we don't accept transfer students, so you can't come halfway through your bachelor's, for example. If you apply for a bachelor's program with us, then once you have an offer of admission, you can talk to the program coordinator and say, I have these relevant previous studies, and sometimes they will be able to assign you credits on that basis or allow you to skip certain courses. But that's a conversation that they will not have with you unless you have an offer. So yeah, unfortunately, it's not a possibility to transfer in and then complete your degree here, unless there is some pre-existing arrangement or a joint program between your university and Lund, which you probably would already know if that was the case. Okay, so hopefully that's answered that question. So I'll move on to the next question here. Actually, that's the same question, basically. Can I complete the remaining 2 years? So I hope that that has answered your question as well. And yeah, asking a very, very similar, but not quite the same question. Can I switch horizontally to a different area? Because I am in this department and I want to go to this department. Again, you must have the requirements for that program. So check whether or not you do have the requirements for that program. And you can't switch in halfway through from a previous program. You have to have, this is because you have to have exactly the same previous experience as any student in that program. And that's difficult when you're moving in from a different country. So it would be something that you could only discuss if you were eligible for the program and had received an offer, basically. Okay, so do you have to pass a university entrance exam in Turkey for bachelor's degree? No, you don't have to pass any kind of university entrance exam. And actually, I'm glad that you've raised this question, because on some of our program pages at the moment, you may notice that the eligibility requirements for bachelors talk about your grade based on something called the SWE-SAT, the SWE-SAT. That's only for Swedish students. They have the option of taking a special university entrance exam, but please ignore that if you're not Swedish, because international students do not have to take any kind of international or local entrance exam. You are graded in a different group from the Swedish students, so it won't affect your chances of entry, for example. Yeah. And then there's a question here about the GRE score, and I think I probably covered that earlier, but I'll just repeat it in case perhaps you missed that. You do not have to have a GRE score in order to get accepted. If you have a really great GRE and you're applying for a business program which specifically mentions that they are happy for you to submit your GRE or your GMAT score, then that's fine. You are welcome to submit it, but not submitting it is also fine because it's not required. So it's only if you want to add a little extra detail for them. The way that people usually are assessed in Sweden does like to include this kind of like holistic view of the person. So they try to, allow you chances to show who you are, and that can help. But it also is fine not to submit it if it's not requested. And it has nothing to do with the scholarship either, just so you know. The scholarship is based purely on academic merit if you apply for the Lund University Global Scholarship. So there's a question here about minimum GPA, and that's a lovely question as well because so many people ask that question. Is there a minimum GPA? There is no minimum that is like a standard set requirement. We normally say we look for about a 3.0 GPA at least, but you can still apply if you have a lower GPA. It's just that we're a very competitive university, and so the higher your grade is, the higher your chance of being accepted effectively. But of course, other factors do come into master's applications. While the bachelor's application is only based on your high school studies, the master's application is based on not only your previous studies, but also any documents that the program requests, such as a statement of purpose. So you could still try to apply and see whether they, like I said, take into account that whole picture of your profile, basically. But it's just worth knowing that if you're under 3.0, the chance is a bit lower. And you may also find that the academic requirements when you're here are quite high as well. So it's just, you know, thinking about your own personal situation and whether or not you are a fan of that kind of study. Yeah, I hope that is a clear enough answer, but it's a bit different in Sweden because they don't look at just a GPA. They also look mainly at what have you studied before. So in order to apply, they don't say you must have this GPA, but they usually say you must have studied this particular subject. So it's a slightly different way of, slightly different barrier to apply, basically. Okay, so, yes, that's a great question. And I thank you for translating, Zainab. Do you organise webinars where the university lecturers participate and answer questions? Yes, we actually have got a series of webinars running currently. We have subject weeks, so every week we have a different subject area highlighted. Now with engineering, I think they're still to go. They still have their week coming up, but I'm not sure. So what I'll do is I'll find the list of virtual events for you, and I'll share it here in the chat, because then you can check whether or not this has already passed. And even if it has already passed, we've published all of the videos from those events on our website. So you're very welcome to look at the interviews that we did with our staff for that particular subject area. So I'll just put that in the chat here. And I'll just write virtual events so that you know what this is. There we go. And for anybody who's writing any questions in the chat, would you mind writing it in the questions box instead so that I can see it? That would be really helpful. Thank you. Okay, so just a couple more questions here on this screen. Can we get conditional acceptance if we can't get the required IELTS score? Unfortunately, you must provide proof of your English. There is no conditional acceptance relating to your English proficiency. But there is more than one way to prove your English proficiency, as we mentioned in the presentation. So I would advise you to check the university admissions site regarding the English requirements to make sure what option applies to you, because perhaps you can prove this through your bachelor studies, for example. If not, and if it is the only option for you to do a test, then you must have that test, you must have that result before the document deadline, which is the 1st of February 2022. And there is no flexibility there. There's no conditional offer available. So I'm sorry if that's disappointing, but hopefully you have enough time to arrange that if that's the case, that you need to do that. Okay. So somebody has asked about the specific requirements for a particular program, and I'm going to ask you to look on the program pages on the website to find those requirements, because there are just so many programs. So in order to make this useful for everybody who's watching, I think it's better to give a general answer and say, please check out the program page and have a look at what it says under eligibility requirements. If after looking at that you're still not sure, please do contact us. I can put the link on how to contact us in the chat as well. so that you can get more advice. In fact, I'll do that now. And I'm going to put a email here, which is our general email, because that's the best way to contact us if you have questions at this point. Okay, so last one. Can International Science Olympiad medal owners get acceptance for bachelors directly? Wow, I mean, that's great that that somebody is a International Science Olympiad owner. Well done there. Unfortunately, it may not be the case that it counts towards your academic merit. However, it's something, because usually that's just based on your high school results or your bachelor's results. So it's not usually additional qualifications. However, when you apply for the Lund University Global Scholarship, you're also asked to write a motivation letter, and it could be something that relates to your motivation to study that you could mention there, and that could help to ensure that you're considered for the Lund University Global Scholarship. However, that scholarship is only a tuition fee discount. It is not what we would call a 100% or full scholarship that covers living costs. So that's just another thing to be aware of, that even with that scholarship, you would get up to 90% discount on your tuition fee, but it wouldn't cover living costs. So it is a bit tricky. There are other scholarships available which perhaps may consider extracurricular achievements or academic achievements outside of your high school studies, for example. But you would have to have a look and research those yourself. Okay, let's see. Is there any other questions now? We've got a few more on here. I'm going to hopefully have enough time to answer them. And I can see we've got... Yeah, okay. So a similar question, actually, about somebody's son being a very able sporting person, which is also wonderful. I mean, wow, the Turkish national ski team, that's brilliant. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, the scholarship which we offer, the Lund University Global Scholarship, is only based on academic merit and motivation. So it would be possible to mention that in the motivation letter if it was relevant to the program you're applying to. I'm not sure which program would have, easy links or relevance to that. But unfortunately, I would say that Sweden doesn't really offer the kind of sporting bursaries that you may see in other countries, such as the UK, for example. So I have to be honest about that it's not something that we can really offer, is a bursary or a scholarship fund based on sporting achievement, whereas other universities in other countries, such as the US and the UK, I know often do that. So that's just another factor to consider about whether or not it's the right choice for you, but I hope that there are other reasons and other options for your son. So I hope that's okay. And of course, Sweden is a great place to ski, so that's something to consider. And I think so about being in a different countries' educational systems and applying for a bachelor's. So, for example, International Baccalaureate. You can apply with an IB, for example, or with other countries' qualifications. You would have to go to the university admissions website and have a look at the guidance for that particular kind of academic background in order to know what the requirements are for you. Okay, and then I think this may be the final question, unless I've missed one. So somebody has finished an environmental engineering program and is asking whether they can make a master's degree about their department and then maybe get a job. So I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure exactly what kind of plan you're thinking of here. In terms of the way that you would kind of come to Lund, the standard way would be to apply for a master's. If you finished a bachelor's in environmental engineering, then you would look for a relevant program at master's level and you would apply and you would come and study. You are also very welcome, of course, to look at job opportunities for our university on our website. Or if you're thinking about doing some kind of research project, you're very welcome to contact the environmental department to see if that's something that they can offer you. But usually you would need to have your own funding in place in order to have that open to you. So yeah, you would need to find a way to come here. And yeah, if you came here, for example, working under a work permit, it's perfectly possible to then later study, but that's not something I have much expertise on because I'm mostly an expert in the study route. So I'm afraid I would have to ask you to have a look at the Migration Office website for Sweden to find out more about that kind of process of going from working to study, for example. Tuition fees are available on the website under the program pages. And also you can watch this video back later to see a bit more information about scholarships. But you can also find those by searching for Lund University scholarships as well, if you would like to have a look at the webpage about that. So yeah, I guess that's probably a good place to end it, actually, on that reminder that we have recorded this and you are very welcome to watch it again later, so that you know the answers to your questions. And then if you, for some reason, cannot find the answer to your question, then please do feel free to email us, and we will obviously follow up as well with everybody who has attended today, so that you're able to contact us if you have any further questions. Great. I hope that that's answered your questions. Maybe I'll hand back to you, Zeynep. If you're there.
Yes, thank you very much for the great presentation, Rebecca, and you covered all of the questions. Thank you for your answers too. It was another fantastic session with you.
Thank you.
And also, I would like to thank the participants in Turkish as well. Katıldığınız için teşekkür ederiz arkadaşlar. Lund University ile ilgili diğer sorularınız için chat kısmında paylaşılmış olan mail adresinden Rebecca'ya ulaşabilir ve linkleri inceleyebilirsiniz. Umarım sizin için de faydalı bir webinar olmuştur. Tekrarını izlemek için platformda kalabilirsiniz. Aynı zamanda YouTube kanalımızda da paylaşılacaktır. Yarınki webinarlarımızda görüşmek üzere. Thank you very much again, Rebecca. It was a pleasure to have you in IEFT Talks.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.